The wind on the planet called Aegis Prime sounded like a screaming ghost. It was a harsh, frozen rock at the very edge of human space. Outside the thick metal walls of the colony, the temperature was low enough to freeze a person solid in seconds. But inside, it was warm. It smelled like machine oil and hot coffee. Commander Sarah Vance stood in the central control room. She held a cup of coffee that had gone cold an hour ago. She looked at the giant screens on the wall. They showed the mining drones working deep in the ice canyons. It was a Tuesday. It was a boring Tuesday, just like every other day for the last 5 years. "Status report," Sarah said, rubbing her tired eyes. Miller, the chief communications officer, spun around in his chair. He was a young man who usually smiled too much, but today he wasn't smiling. He was frowning at his console. "All systems green, Commander," Miller said, but his voice sounded uncertain. "The mining drills are at 90% capacity. The atmospheric shields are holding." But what?" Sarah asked, stepping closer. "I'm getting some weird readings from the deep space sensors," Miller said. He tapped his screen. "It's the outer buoys. You know, the sensors we placed way out in the asteroid belt?" "Did an asteroid hit one?" Sarah asked. "No, Commander," Miller said softly. "They didn't break. They just stopped." Sarah frowned. "Stopped transmitting? Like a power failure?" "No," Miller shook his head. "I mean they are gone. 1 second, they were sending data about solar winds. The next second, total silence. And it's not just one buoy. It's buoy alpha, then beta, then gamma. They are going offline in a sequence. One by one. Approaching us." The control room went quiet. The other officers stopped typing. The hum of the ventilation fans seemed to get louder. "How fast?" Sarah asked. Her heart started to beat a little faster. Miller swallowed hard. "Fast, Commander. Whatever is knocking them out is moving at light speed. And it's heading straight for Aegis Prime." Sarah put her cold coffee down on the metal table with a loud clack. "Open a channel to Earth Command. Priority 1. Miller's fingers flew across his keyboard. A red light flashed on his screen. Then another. Then a third. I can't, Commander," Miller stammered. Sweat was starting to form on his forehead. "There is no signal. It's like a wall of static has cut us off. We are completely jammed." "Try the supply ships," Sarah ordered, her voice sharp and commanding. "Try the USS Horizon. They were supposed to be in orbit today." "Trying now," Miller said. The speakers in the room crackled with harsh white noise. "KRR shush, KRR shush. Nothing. Just noise. Commander, I think something is blocking all outgoing signals." Suddenly, the lights in the control room flickered. The low hum of the main power generator deepened, changing pitch. The floor vibrated beneath their boots. "Energy spike detected," shouted a woman from the tactical station. "Massive energy signature detected directly above the colony. It's huge." "Put it on the main screen," Sarah yelled. The giant screen on the wall shifted from the mining map to the external camera view. At first, all they saw were the thick, gray clouds of Aegis Prime. The wind whipped the snow around in violent circles. Then, the clouds broke. A collective gasp went through the room. It was a ship. But it didn't look like any human ship. Human ships were blocky, practical, built with steel and engines. This thing looked like a piece of the night sky had broken off and fallen down. It was black, pitch black, and shaped like a jagged spearhead. It was silent. It had no glowing engines, no exhaust trails. And it was enormous. It was so big that it blocked out the weak sun of the planet. A massive shadow fell over the colony, turning the day into instant night. "My God," Miller whispered. "The sensors, they can't even measure the mass. It's the size of a city." "Shields up." Sarah screamed, snapping out of her shock. Red alert! Sound the alarm! The sirens began to wail. WOOP, WOOP, WOOP. The red emergency lights started spinning, bathing the room in the color of blood. Shields are raising, the tactical officer reported, her voice shaking. But Commander, that thing isn't hailing us. It's not asking for surrender. They aren't here to talk, Sarah said grimly. She looked at the black shape on the screen. She felt a deep, primal fear in her stomach. This was the moment every colony commander feared. The first contact that wasn't peaceful. On the screen, the bottom of the black ship began to change. The smooth, dark metal shifted like liquid. A circle opened in the center of the vessel. Inside the circle, a purple light began to glow. It started as a small, pulsing like a heartbeat. Thump thump. Thump thump. Then the light grew brighter. It became a blinding violet eye, staring down at the tiny human buildings below. Energy levels on that ship are off the charts, the tactical officer screamed. They are charging a weapon. It's targeting the main habitat dome. Divert all power to the shields. Sarah ordered. Cut life support, cut the mining drills, cut everything. Give me 100% power to the overhead shields. The lights in the room died completely, leaving only the red emergency glow and the bright, terrifying image on the main screen. Shields at maximum. Miller yelled. Commander, impact in 5 seconds. Sarah Vance gripped the edge of her console. Her knuckles were white. She looked at the screen, at the alien monster hanging in the sky. She thought of the 5,000 families living in the habitat dome. She thought of the children in the colony school. Hold on to something, she shouted. On the screen, the purple eye flashed. It didn't make a sound. A beam of pure, concentrated violet energy shot down from the sky. It looked like a pillar of fire. It hit the colony's defensive shield with the force of a nuclear bomb. Boom! The entire control room shook violently. People were thrown out of their chairs. Sparks showered down from the ceiling. The sound was deafening, a grinding, tearing noise, like metal screaming in pain. Sarah was thrown to the floor. She scrambled back up, grabbing the desk for support. She looked at the main screen. The human shield was glowing gold, straining against the purple alien beam. Cracks were appearing in the energy barrier. It looked like glass about to shatter. Shield integrity dropping, the tactical officer cried out, terror in her voice. 70%. 50%. Commander, it's not going to hold. Sarah stared at the destruction. The alien beam was pushing down, harder and harder. The gold shield buckled. Brace for impact. Sarah screamed. The screen turned white as the shield shattered. The white light on the main screen faded, but the screaming did not stop. When the defensive shield shattered, the sound was louder than thunder. It was a physical blow. The shockwave slammed into the colony buildings below. In the control room, Commander Sarah Vance pulled herself up from the cold metal floor. Her ears were ringing. A high-pitched whine, like a broken radio, filled her head. Report, she coughed, waving away the acrid smoke that filled the room. Is the shield generator active? Miller was still at his station, but his face was covered in blood from a cut on his forehead. He looked at his console with wide, terrified eyes. Gone, Miller whispered. The generator is melted slag, Commander. The main habitat dome has been breached. Atmosphere is venting. The heating systems are offline. Sarah looked up at the main screen. The image flickered, distorted by static, but she could see the horror outside. The purple beam from the massive alien ship had stopped. But it had done its job. The beautiful, glowing gold dome that protected the colony was gone. In its place was a gaping hole. The freezing wind of Aegis Prime was rushing in, freezing everything instantly. They are launching dropships, the tactical officer shouted. Her voice cracked with panic. Dozens of them. They are coming down like rain. On the screen, small black pods detached from the giant mothership. They didn't fly gracefully like human planes. They fell fast and hard, slamming into the colony streets with heavy thuds. They crushed cars, smashed through roofs, and landed in the middle of the evacuation zones. Security teams. Sarah yelled into her radio. Engage! Do not let them reach the civilian shelters. Buy us time. Down on the ground, Sergeant Cole heard the order in his helmet. He was a big man, a veteran of the mining wars, holding a heavy assault rifle. He stood with 20 other security guards near the entrance to the residential block. They were brave men and women, but they were shaking. Hold the line. Cole roared over the wind. Fire at will. One of the black pods in front of them hissed. Steam shot out from its sides. A ramp slammed down onto the frozen concrete. Out of the darkness stepped the nightmare. They were called the Kravak. They stood 8 feet tall, towering over the humans. They had 4 arms, 2 holding heavy, glowing weapons, and 2 smaller ones near their chests for close combat. They were not wearing spacesuits. They didn't need to. Their bodies were covered in thick, shiny black armor, like the shell of a giant beetle. Open fire! Cole screamed. 20 heavy rifles opened up at once. Rat-tat-tat-tat-tat-tat. The noise was deafening. Tracer rounds lit up the dark street. Hundreds of bullets hit the lead alien. But the alien didn't fall. It didn't even slow down. The bullets sparked against its black shell and bounced off harmlessly. It was like throwing gravel at a tank. The alien took a step forward, then another. The heavy thud of its feet shook the ground. It's not working, one of the guards yelled. They are bulletproof. The Kravak raised one of its upper arms. The weapon it held glowed with that same sickly purple light. It made a sound like tearing paper. Zzz thump. A bolt of plasma shot across the street. It hit the guard who had shouted. There was no blood. The man simply vanished in a flash of heat and ash. His rifle clattered to the ground, smoking. Fall back! Cole yelled, realizing the terrifying truth. Fall back to the mines. Go! Go! But the aliens were fast. For creatures so big, they moved with terrifying speed. They swarmed out of the pods. They didn't run, they skittered, like spiders. They overran the security barricade in seconds. The screams of the human defenders were cut short by the hum of plasma weapons. High above, inside the massive black ship, the view was very different. Warlord Tsar stood on the bridge of his Conqueror-class vessel. He looked down at the tactical map. Red dots, the humans, were blinking out one by one. Tsar was a Kravak of the high caste. His armor was etched with gold patterns. He had 4 eyes, black and unblinking, that watched the slaughter with boredom. To him, this was not a war. War implied that the enemy could fight back. This was pest control. The soft ones are breaking, his sub-commander chittered, clicking his mandibles together. Their weapons are primitive. Kinetic slugs. Chemical explosives. They are barely a level 1 civilization. Do not waste energy, Tsar said. His voice was a deep, vibrating bass that shook the air. Secure the resource stockpiles. We need the metal. Capture the survivors if they surrender. If they resist, burn them. I want this rock cleared within the hour. Tsar turned away from the screen. He was disappointed. He had hoped for a challenge. Humans were rumored to be dangerous, but these creatures were weak. They broke so easily. Back in the colony control room, Sarah Vance watched her home die. She saw the security teams get wiped out. She saw the aliens breach the school. She saw the fires burning in the snow. Tears streamed down her face, but she forced her voice to remain steady. Panic would kill them all. Commander, Miller said, his voice hollow. We have lost sectors 1, 2, and 4. The security team is 90% casualties. The aliens are heading for the main elevator. Sarah looked at the map. The aliens were efficient. They were cutting the colony into pieces, herding the humans into corners and slaughtering them. We can't hold the surface, Sarah said. She felt a heavy weight in her chest, the weight of failure. If we stay here, we die. She grabbed the colony microphone. She didn't use the military channel. She used the public address system. Her voice echoed through every hallway, every dorm, and every tunnel of Aegis Prime. Attention all personnel, Sarah said. This is Commander Vance. The surface is lost. Do not try to fight. I repeat, do not try to fight. Proceed immediately to the emergency mine shafts. Seal the blast doors behind you. We are going underground. This is a general retreat. Run. She slammed the microphone down. Miller, wipe the computer banks, she ordered. Don't leave them any data on Earth or our other colonies. Tactical, trigger the hallway collapse charges to slow them down. What about us, Commander? Miller asked, standing up. They are breaching the blast doors to this building. As he spoke, a loud boom shook the door to the control room. Then the sound of something melting metal began. Hiss crackle. The heavy steel door started to glow orange in the center. We go, Sarah said, pulling her sidearm from her holster. To the maintenance lift. Now. The crew scrambled toward the back of the room. Sarah took one last look at the main screen. The colony was burning. The black ships hung in the sky like vultures. The pride of humanity's outer rim was being erased in minutes. The door to the control room exploded inward. Smoke and purple light poured in. Sarah fired 2 shots blindly into the smoke, not waiting to see if they hit. She jumped into the elevator with her crew and slammed the down button. As the doors closed, she saw a massive, 4-armed shadow step into the room she had just left. It let out a screech that sounded like metal scraping on bone. The elevator dropped. They were alive, but for how long? They were trapped in the dark, deep underground, with an unstoppable army above them. And the aliens were hungry for more. The elevator ride felt like an eternity. The small metal box rattled and shook as it descended deep into the crust of Aegis Prime. Every few seconds, a distant explosion from the surface sent a vibration through the cables, making everyone inside hold their breath. They were leaving the sun and the sky behind, burying themselves in the belly of the planet. When the doors finally hissed open, they were 5 miles underground. The air here was different. It was thick, hot, and smelled of sulfur and wet stone. This was the low level, the deepest part of the mining operation. It was a place of shadows, lit only by flickering yellow emergency lights. Sarah Vance stepped out, her boots clacking on the metal grating. She saw hundreds of people, miners in orange jumpsuits, families clutching blankets, and a few blood-stained security guards. They were sitting on crates or leaning against the rough stone walls. There was no talking. Only the sound of soft crying and the heavy thud of the ventilation fans. They looked like ghosts. They looked like people who were already dead. "Commander," a voice called out. An old man walked toward her. He was covered in black dust, and his beard was a messy tangle of gray hair. This was Elias, the chief engineer. He had lived on Aegis Prime longer than anyone else. He knew every crack in the rock and every bolt in the machines. "Elias," Sarah said, her voice raspy. "How many did we save?" Elias looked back at the crowd of survivors. "Maybe 500 here. Another few hundred are trapped in the secondary shafts. But the surface is gone, Sarah. My sensors say the air up there is nothing but smoke and purple fire." "And the aliens?" Sarah asked. Elias pointed his thumb toward the ceiling. "They aren't stupid. They found the elevator shafts 5 minutes after you left. They are trying to override the codes now. Our blast doors are thick, but those purple guns of theirs, they eat through steel like it's butter. We have an hour. Maybe less." Sarah looked around at the people. They were looking at her, waiting for a miracle. But she had no miracles left. Her guns were useless. Her ships were destroyed. They were cornered rats in a dark hole. "There has to be a way out," Miller said, his voice high and thin with panic. "Is there a back exit? A secret tunnel?" Elias laughed, a dry, bitter sound. "Kid, we are 5 miles down. There is no back door. The only thing below us is the planetary core." Sarah's eyes sharpened. She looked at Elias. "The core. Tell me about the energy readings we've been seeing lately." Elias stopped laughing. He looked at her suspiciously. "Why?" "The Kravak," Sarah said, using the name she had heard over the radio. "Their technology is perfect. Their ships are sleek. Their shields are precise. They are like a fine-tuned engine. Everything they do is based on perfect control." Elias nodded slowly. "Yeah, so?" "Humanity isn't about control," Sarah said, her voice growing stronger. "We are about survival. We build things that are loud, dirty, and dangerous. Elias, you told me once that the core of this planet is unstable. You said it was a mess of raw geothermal energy and chaotic radiation." Elias took a step back. "It is. It's a nightmare. We spend half our budget just keeping the containment fields from exploding. If those fields ever dropped, this whole sector would be flooded with enough magnetic interference to fry every circuit for 50 miles. It would be a storm of blue fire." "Would it kill the aliens?" Sarah asked. "It would kill everything," Elias replied. "The radiation alone would stop a heart in minutes. And their fancy electronic shields? They'd probably pop like light bulbs in a microwave. But Sarah, it would kill us too. We'd be standing in the middle of the furnace." Sarah walked over to a nearby crate and sat down. She put her head in her hands. The silence of the mines pressed in on her. She thought about the Kravak warlord sitting in his clean, quiet ship, looking down at them like they were insects. He thought he had already won. He thought the humans were just waiting to die. She looked up at the survivors. A young mother was holding a crying baby. A miner was trying to bandaging his friend's arm with a piece of a shirt. "They are coming for us," Sarah said loudly, her voice echoing through the tunnel. Everyone looked up. "The aliens think we are weak. They think that because they have better guns, they own us. But they don't know who we are." She turned to Elias. "Humanity didn't survive on Earth because we were the strongest. We survived because when we are cornered, we get mean. We break the rules. If we are going to die in this hole, I'm not going to die hiding. I'm going to die fighting." Elias watched her for a long time. Then, a slow, wicked grin spread across his dusty face. "You want to let the monster out of the box, don't you?" "I want to turn this planet into a graveyard for that black ship," Sarah said. "It's a suicide mission," Miller whispered, his face pale. "No," Elias said, his eyes glowing with a strange spark. "Not necessarily. We have the Mark IV hazard suits in the deep storage. They are thick, lead-lined, and built for repairing the core. They are heavy and ugly, and you can barely move in them, but they can block the radiation for a short time." Elias pointed to the heavy mining tools sitting in the racks, plasma drills meant for cutting through solid diamond, hydraulic crushers that could flatten a tank, and high-heat torches. "The aliens' weapons are based on sensors and electronics," Elias explained. "The core's energy will blind them. They won't be able to see, their shields will fail, and they'll be choking on the radiation. But we know these tunnels in the dark. We have the suits. And we have the tools." Sarah stood up. She felt a cold, hard anger replacing her fear. "Elias, take the engineers. Go to the core control. Prepare to drop the containment. Miller, get everyone into those hazard suits. Every man, woman, and child." "What about the security guards?" Sergeant Cole asked, stepping forward. He was holding a broken drill he had found. Sarah looked at him. "Give them the heavy tools. We aren't soldiers anymore, Sergeant. We are miners. And we have some trash to clear out of our home. Deep above them, the sound of the blast doors groaning began. The aliens were through. The purple light was beginning to spill into the upper tunnels. Go! Sarah shouted. The cornered rats weren't running anymore. They were sharpening their claws in the dark. The air in the deep core chamber was vibrating. It wasn't a sound you heard with your ears, it was a hum you felt in your teeth. Commander Sarah Vance stood behind Elias as he worked at the ancient, scratched control panel. Above them, the ceiling groaned. The Kravak were coming. They had reached the final set of stairs. How much longer, Elias? Sarah asked. She was already wearing her hazard suit. It was a massive, clunky suit of lead and reinforced plastic. It made her look like a giant, golden beetle. The magnetic locks are stubborn, Elias muttered, his fingers dancing over the keys. They were designed never to be opened. I'm basically telling the planet to have a heart attack. Give me 30 seconds. Suddenly, the heavy metal door at the top of the chamber began to glow. A thin line of purple light appeared as the Kravak plasma cutters sliced through the steel. They're here, Miller whispered through the suit's radio. He and 20 miners stood in the shadows, clutching heavy industrial drills and jagged rock saws. Don't move until the lights go out, Sarah commanded. The door burst open. The first Kravak warrior stepped through the smoke. It looked magnificent and terrifying. Its black armor shone under the chamber's lights. It raised its 4 arms, its purple weapons glowing, ready to erase the weak humans. The alien leader let out a clicking sound, a laugh of triumph. Now, Elias. Do it. Sarah yelled. Elias slammed his fist onto a giant red lever. Welcome to Aegis Prime, you bastards. For a heartbeat, there was total silence. Then, the world exploded into blue. Deep below them, the containment fields dropped. The planetary core, a boiling ocean of raw, radioactive liquid metal, was suddenly exposed. A massive wave of geothermal energy and electromagnetic pulses, EMP, surged upward like a volcano. In an instant, every smart device in the colony died. The bright overhead lights shattered. The computer screens exploded. But the biggest change happened to the aliens. The Kravak screamed. It was a high-pitched, digital screech. Their advanced technology was their greatest strength, but now it was their greatest weakness. The raw magnetic storm hit their delicate energy shields. Because their shields were designed to be perfect, they couldn't handle the noise of the planet's core. The alien shields began to flicker and pop like bubbles. The purple lights on their weapons turned yellow, then sparked and died. The electronics inside their armor short-circuited, sending thousands of volts of electricity through their own bodies. The magnificent warriors fell to their knees, twitching and blinded. The lights are out for them, Sarah said, her voice booming through her suit's external speakers. But we've been working in the dark our whole lives. Forward. The humans moved. In their heavy, lead-lined suits, they were protected from the radiation and the electrical fire. They didn't need sensors or targeting computers. They had lived in these mines for years, they knew the shape of the shadows. A Kravak warrior tried to stand, reaching for a backup dagger. But it couldn't see. The magnetic storm had blinded its electronic helmet. A miner named Big Pete stepped out of the darkness. He wasn't holding a gun. He was holding a thermal rock crusher, a tool designed to smash boulders the size of houses. With a roar, Pete swung the tool. Crack! The alien's unbreakable black armor shattered like glass. The Kravak was sent flying across the room, its chest caved in. See that? Pete yelled. If it can break a rock, it can break a bug. All across the lower levels, the hunt began. The Kravak, who had been the hunters only minutes ago, were now the prey. They were trapped in heavy armor they couldn't see out of, in a room filled with invisible fire that was cooking their insides. Sarah Vance led the charge toward the main elevator. She held a plasma mining torch. When a Kravak tried to lung at her, she stepped aside and jammed the white-hot flame into the joint of the alien's shoulder. The torch, designed to melt frozen iron, sliced through the alien's limb in seconds. The humans were brutal. They weren't fighting like soldiers, they were fighting like laborers. They used hydraulic claws to snap alien necks. They used high-pressure water hoses to knock the giants off their feet. They used their knowledge of the terrain to lure the blinded aliens into deep mining pits. "Commander! The mother ship!" Miller shouted, pointing at a small monitor that was shielded by lead. High above the planet, the giant black city ship was in trouble. The energy wave from the core had traveled up through the atmosphere. The ship's massive engines, which relied on perfect gravity control, began to fail. The sleek, dark vessel started to wobble. Its lights flickered and dimmed. It was no longer a god of the sky, it was a heavy rock being pulled down by gravity. On the bridge of the mother ship, Warlord Zar was screaming. "Restore the shields! Why can we not see the surface? The radiation is too thick, Warlord," his officer cried, for arms waving in panic. "The humans, they have turned the entire planet into a jammer. Our systems are crashing. We are falling." Zar looked at the view screen. Through the static, he saw the tiny, orange figures of the humans crawling over as fallen warriors on the ground. They looked like ants bringing down a giant beetle. For the first time in 1,000 years, the Kravak felt something they had forgotten. They felt fear. They had attacked a species they thought was soft. They thought power was found in clean lines and advanced math. They were wrong. The humans of Aegis Prime had just shown them that true power is the ability to survive the fire, and then use that fire to burn your enemies. "We have to leave," Zar ordered, his voice trembling. "Abandon the ground forces. Get us back into the vacuum." But it was too late. The gravity of Aegis Prime was strong, and the humans weren't letting go. The blue glow of the planetary core continued to pulse through the tunnels of Aegis Prime. To the aliens, this energy was a poison that blinded their eyes and killed their machines. But to the humans, it was the rhythm of victory. Commander Sarah Vance stood at the base of the main elevator shaft. Her heavy hazard suit was covered in black alien blood and gray stone dust. She looked at the men and women around her. They didn't look like scared miners anymore. They looked like a pack of wolves. "The mother ship is losing altitude," Sarah's voice crackled through the short-range radios. "Their electronics are fried, and they're falling into the atmosphere. If they hit the ground at full speed, the explosion will finish what they started. We can't let that happen." "What's the plan, Commander?" Sergeant Cole asked. He was now wearing a suit he had patched together with metal plates, carrying a massive industrial plasma cutter like a sword. "We don't just want them to leave," Sarah said. "We want their ship. We need their tech to rebuild. And we need to send a message." The humans began the adaptation. This was the true power of humanity, the ability to change their tools and their tactics in the middle of a disaster. Since their radios were mostly dead, the miners started using old-fashioned hand signals and light flashes to communicate. They took the dead alien technology they had captured and ripped it apart. They found that while the alien electronics were fried, the physical materials, the super-strong carbon fibers and the gravity plates, were still useful. Within 30 minutes, the miners had turned their heavy transport trucks into storm sleds. They welded pieces of alien armor onto the fronts of the trucks and attached massive mining drills to the hoods. They weren't pretty, and they made a horrible noise, but they were built to survive the radiation storm. "Upper levels are clear," Miller shouted, signaling from a high ledge. The humans moved back to the surface. When they emerged from the mine shafts, the world looked like a different planet. The sky was no longer gray, it was a swirling vortex of purple alien smoke and blue geothermal lightning. The giant black mother ship was hanging low in the sky, maybe only a mile up. It was tilting heavily to one side. Smoke poured from its side engines. Smaller alien dropships were scattered across the snowy plains, some crashed, others sitting idle because their pilots couldn't see to fly them. "Charge!" Sarah ordered. The storm sleds roared to life. The heavy trucks bounced over the frozen ground, heading straight for the grounded alien pods. The Kravak soldiers on the surface were in a state of total panic. Without their central computer to give them orders, and without their electronic HUDs to show them where the enemy was, they were helpless. They fired their purple weapons blindly into the snow. The human trucks didn't stop. They rammed into the alien pods at full speed. Miners jumped off the trucks before they even stopped moving. It was a strange sight, the most advanced army in the galaxy being attacked by people with power wrenches and rock hammers. A Kravak warrior tried to raise its 4 arms to fight, but a human miner used a hydraulic lid popper, a tool meant for opening stuck cargo doors, to rip the alien's helmet clean off. The alien gasped as the cold, radioactive air hit its lungs. It fell in seconds. They can't handle the noise. Elias yelled, watching a group of miners use a magnetic crane to flip an alien tank onto its back. Their brains are built for order. They can't understand a fight this messy. Sarah Vance led a special team toward the main gravity lift of the mother ship. The lift was a beam of light that usually pulled things up into the ship. Now, it was flickering and weak. "We're going up," Sarah said. "Into the lion's den?" Miller asked, checking his oxygen levels. "No," Sarah replied. "The lion is sick. We're going in to finish it." Using the flickering gravity beam, Sarah and 20 of her toughest miners were pulled slowly up into the belly of the giant black ship. When they landed on the hangar floor, they found chaos. The ship's internal lights were flashing red. Alien corpses lay everywhere, not killed by humans, but by their own technology exploding in their faces. The air inside the ship smelled like burning plastic and ozone. Sarah raised her mining torch. "Target the bridge. If we take the bridge, we take the ship." They moved through the corridors of the mother ship. The Kravak they encountered were weak and disoriented. The humans moved like ghosts in the dark. Every time an alien tried to regroup, a human would appear from a maintenance vent or a side door, striking with brutal, industrial force. The humans were adapting to the ship's layout faster than the aliens could defend it. They used the aliens' own ventilation shafts to move around. They used alien cables to tie doors shut. They were treating the most advanced warship in the universe like a broken-down mining rig that needed fixing. In the center of the ship, Warlord Zar sat in his command chair. He watched as the doors to his bridge began to glow white-hot. Someone was cutting through from the other side. "How?" Zar whispered to himself. "We are the superior species. We have the stars. They have rocks." The door exploded inward. A giant, golden metal figure stepped through the smoke. It wasn't a sleek robot or a perfect soldier. It was Commander Sarah Vance in her scarred, ugly hazard suit. She held a plasma drill that was humming with terrifying power. Behind her stood a line of humans, their faces hidden behind lead glass visors, looking like ancient monsters. Zar reached for his sidearm, but his 4 hands were shaking. "The planet belongs to the people who can survive it," Sarah's voice echoed through the bridge, distorted and deep. "And we've survived a lot worse than you." The adaptation was complete. The prey was now the captain. The bridge of the mother ship was silent, except for the sound of sparking wires and the heavy breathing of the human miners. Warlord Zar sat on the floor, his 4 arms bound with high-strength steel cables. He looked up at Commander Sarah Vance. His 4 black eyes were full of a new emotion, total, crushing defeat. You are monsters," Zar hissed in his clicking language. The translation device on his belt was broken, but the humans understood his tone. Sarah Vance didn't answer him. She didn't need to. She looked out through the massive glass windows of the bridge. Below them, the blue glow of the planet's core was finally starting to fade. The energy storm was calming down. The humans on the ground were already moving. They weren't dancing or celebrating, they were picking up pieces of metal, helping the wounded, and starting to build again. "Miller," Sarah said, her voice tired but firm. "Is the long-range transmitter working?" Miller was sitting at the alien communications console. He had ripped out the alien keyboard and plugged in a human laptop he had carried in his backpack. It was a messy hack, but it worked. "The radiation is low enough now, Commander," Miller said. "I can send one burst message. It will hit every relay station in this sector. Every alien race, every colony, and the Kravak homeworld will hear us." "Good," Sarah said. She stepped toward the camera. She took off her heavy, lead-line helmet. Her hair was matted with sweat, and there was a bruise across her cheek, but her eyes were like cold flint. "Record this," she ordered. The red light on the console blinked. Across the galaxy, on thousands of worlds, a screen flickered to life. They didn't see a grand army or a beautiful queen. They saw a tired woman in a dusty mining suit, standing on the bridge of a conquered warship. "This is Commander Sarah Vance of the Aegis Prime colony," she began. Her voice was calm, which made it even more terrifying. "To the Kravak Empire, you came to our home while we were sleeping. You thought we were weak because we spend our time building instead of destroying. You thought that because your technology was perfect, you were gods. You were wrong." She stepped aside so the camera could see the captured warlord Tsar shivering on the floor. "We are humans," Sarah continued. "We evolved on a planet that tried to kill us every day for 1,000,000 years. We are used to the dark. We are used to the cold. And we are very, very good at breaking things that think they are unbreakable." She leaned closer to the camera, her face filling the screens of 1,000 alien civilizations. "Take your survivors and go. But know this, we are keeping your ship. We are going to take it apart. We are going to learn every secret you have. And the next time you see a ship like this, it won't be a Kravak crew inside. It will be us." She paused for a second, then added the final warning. "Do not mistake our peace for weakness. If you come for us again, we won't just drop the shields. We will pull the stars down on your heads. Humanity is done hiding. Stay away from our fires." "Message sent," Miller whispered. "The whole galaxy just heard you, Commander." Sarah nodded. "Good. Now, let's get to work. We have a colony to rebuild." The months that followed were unlike anything in human history. The Aegis miracle changed everything. The wreckage of the mother ship became a gold mine of information. Human engineers, who were already used to making things work in harsh conditions, combined their messy technology with the sleek alien designs. They created ships that were twice as fast and 10 times as tough. They created shields that didn't break when things got chaotic, because they were built for chaos. But the biggest change wasn't the technology. It was the reputation. In the deep space markets and the alien council chambers, the word human became a word of warning. Other alien races, who had once looked at Earth as a small, unimportant rock, now moved their ships far away whenever a human vessel entered the system. They remembered the video of the woman in the dusty suit. They remembered the warlord on his knees. They realized that humans were like a sleeping volcano. As long as you left them alone, they were peaceful. But if you tried to put out their fire, they would explode and consume everything in their path. Back on Aegis Prime, a new city was rising. It wasn't made of glass and light. It was made of thick steel, reinforced with alien carbon fiber. It was built to last. Sarah Vance stood on a balcony overlooking the new habitat dome. Beside her stood Elias. The old engineer was holding a tablet, planning a new power grid that would use the planet's core as a permanent battery. "They haven't come back," Elias said, looking up at the stars. "They won't," Sarah replied. "They're too smart for that now. They know what happens when you corner a rat." "We aren't rats anymore, Sarah," Elias said with a grin. Sarah looked at the giant human flag flying over the new spaceport. It was a simple design, but it stood tall against the screaming wind of the frozen planet. "No," Sarah said softly. "We're the ones who own the dark now." The galaxy was vast, and there were many things in the shadows that were dangerous. But for the first time in history, humanity wasn't afraid of the shadows. Because now, the shadows were afraid of them.